Right. And then you end up hating the,
And he's good at math too.
and that's not a good test, whether you're good or not, that having to do the computer thing. All right, we're gonna move, and all of this, again, well, I shouldn't say all of it, but a lot of it should be reviewed. The crossing of your x and your y axis, do you know what that's called, Sam? What is that, if I said something like that? The overall thing.
A plane?
Okay, it's a plane, or the technical term for it is our Cartesian coordinate plane. Okay, normally we just call it a coordinate plane. That's normally what we've learned it as. When you get to pre-cal, you have like polar planes and you have imaginary planes, and so it's more important that you know, oh, that's a Cartesian coordinate plane. You know that it is the crossing of two number lines, if you will, and it's almost like pixels. So everything on it is represented by a dot. Okay, so just refreshing your mind here. Okay, what would be the location of that dot right there?
You mean like
What's the ordered pair? What's the x and the y for that dot?
X? It would be. I don't remember this was. 3, 2.
3, 2, good. Okay, because you know that the first number is your x value, where it falls on the x-axis. The second number is your y. Okay, understanding that you're gonna, down here is gonna go negative, to the left is gonna go negative. Okay, we're gonna refresh your mind on some of this stuff. These are called quadrants. What's the name of this quadrant? Which quadrant is that called, as far as numbers go? Do you remember? That's the first quadrant. Where's the second quadrant? Do you remember?
The top left one.
Okay, top left. Third quadrant. And fourth quadrant. Okay, if I have, so that 3, 2 is in the first quadrant. If I have a number over here that's, let's say, -5, -2, that's going to be in my third quadrant. What if it's on the line? Okay, what's the name?
0.
Okay, and it's not in a quadrant. You would just say none if they asked you what quadrant. So this is 3, 0. This would be 0, 2, if you will. Okay, so I've got 4 points up there. If I asked you for what the domain of these ordered pairs were, what would that mean? You know what the domain means? Does that term sound familiar to you?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Okay, those are all the x values. The domain is just all the x values. So in this particular group, I would go 0, actually I would probably start with -5 because I'll do it in numeric order. -5, 0, and 3. Now I don't repeat it. I have a 3 and a 3, so I only write the 3 one time. Okay? Do you remember what the y values are called? Starts with an R. See if that sounds familiar. The range?
Yeah.
Okay. The range are just your y values, so I have a -2, 0, and a 2. Okay? You probably learned about mapping. Does that concept sound familiar? Mapping is just another way of presenting all my ordered pairs. I could present them as ordered pairs. I could present them on a graph, like here. I could present them on a table, or I could present them mapping. I always think of those as 2 eggs for some reason. And so then I write down my domain, and I write down my range, and then I draw lines that match. Like at -5, it goes with -2. 0 goes with 2. 3 goes with +2. And 3 also goes with 0. Okay? Do you remember doing that?
Maybe.
Maybe. Should have been in Algebra 1. Okay? That's a mapping. All right, if I say the term function, does that mean anything to you? If I asked you whether these points represented a function,
I don't remember.
okay? How about the term vertical line test?
I remember the term.
Okay, the vertical line test, basically, for something to be a function, it has to pass the vertical line test if I've graphed it. And that means if I put a line straight down,
Oh,
it only hits it one time.
My mom would like have me do like the pencil.
Okay, now, if it is mapping, then I cannot repeat any of my x values, okay? And have it be a function. So function means none of your x values are repeated and it passes the vertical line test. This is not a function, because if I were to draw a line straight down here, it does not, I mean, it hits it twice, it doesn't just hit it once. I know it's not a function by looking at the graph, but I also know it's not a function by looking over here, because that 3 is repeated. Okay, so this is not a function. We're basically working more with functions than anything else in math. Okay, if I turned around and I moved this over and I said this is the point 2, 2. Now I have what's called a discrete function. You'll hear that term in math. Discrete just means it's a series of points that represent a function, but they don't make any shape. They're not a line, they're not a circle, they're not, okay, so I would call this a discrete function. However, let's say I have that. That's a function because none of my values are repeated and it passes the vertical line test, right? This is what we call a continuous function because I connect it. It makes a line. It has a shape to it. You should be able to, and this is what they're going to do on the very first part, is they're going to ask you whether something's a function or not. Okay, so you've got to understand what a function is. So I might give you an equation. Now some of this I'm just checking what you remember, okay? If I asked you if that was a function, what would you tell me? Do you remember what that graphs?
I haven't done. I
Hadn't done it in a while. You had geometry last year. Yeah, so it's gonna. Okay, so I'm gonna go back over it, okay, and see if this sounds familiar. Okay, this equation is in slope intercept form. Okay, which is y equals mx plus b. You remember that? Okay, so this right here is my b. So what does that b tell me? Do you remember how to graph it from that equation? The b is the y-intercept, or where it crosses the y-axis. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to put a point at -4, because my b is -4. From that -4, I'm going to apply my slope. Slope is rise over run. Any of this sound familiar? Kind of. Okay. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and over to the right 1. Then I'm going to draw a line through it. Okay, and then I'm going to show you another way to do it. But we're going to come back to graphing those. Okay. You could do this by just plugging in points. Okay? Let's say that I wanted to know when x is equal to 0, what is y equal to? So I plug the 0 in for the x. So 3 times 0 is 0, 0 minus 4 is -4. So I have the point 0, -4. Then I go over, let's say I want to plug in 1. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 4 is -1. So I have the point 1, -1. That's another way to do this. Okay, not necessarily the most effective way, but it is another way to do it. Okay, sounding familiar, not sounding familiar? Kind of.
Kind of.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay, this is a very vital part of Algebra 2. It should have been pretty solid in Algebra 1. Now, if I were to look at this, is this a function?
Yes.
Yeah, because it passes the vertical line test, right? Okay, let's do another one. That was weird. Okay, if I've got something squared, I'm gonna tell you, it's not gonna be a line. This, if it's just one variable that's squared, it's gonna be a parabola. We're gonna graph more and more parabolas, but I wouldn't expected you to have it yet, the line you've had. So we're gonna do it the same way. Only this time, the easy way to do it is gonna be to plug in for the y. So let's pick the value 0 for my y. There's my y value, okay? So if I plug in 0 here, what is my x equal to?
Put in 0.
Right here for my y?
X is equal to
1. Okay, so then I want to graph that point. 1, 0 is that point right there, right? So let me plug in positive 1 for my y. So I put positive 1 right there. What is my x going to equal?
2.
2. So I'm going to graph the point 2, 1. What if I plug in negative 1 for my y?
It would just 2.
Okay, still 2. So I get this point down here. Okay, this is my parabola. Okay, it's almost like a curved rocket ship. Is that a function? No, it's not a function. Now, you have your calculator? Go ahead and pull your calculator out. Some of these things you can put in your calculator, and some of them you can't. This one you can't because it's x equals, but like a line you can put in. So let's say I have y equals, let me do a couple different ones. Okay, as long as it's y equals, you can put it in your calculator. So I'm going to do 3, and then my variable is going to come from that xt, theta, and n. Oops. And plus 7. And I'm going to hit graph. I'm just going to graph it. Okay? And I'm going to be able to know that that's a function by looking at that. Now, when I come up here, let me do the other one. X squared minus 4. Okay, is that a function? Yeah, okay, because it passes the vertical line test. Okay, now they're going to ask you to graph it. I don't want you to be calculator dependent on this. I want you to plug in points for now, and then we'll talk about how to do it without plugging in points. I think that could be a little, well, you'll get there. You'll get there on the other part.
I do
Okay.
have one question.
Yeah.
How do you when you plug in the points, how do you know what numbers to plug in?
I'm just picking any numbers. You can pick any numbers. Okay, let me go through that. Okay. Let me pick another one up there. That's a good question. Let's say I've got that, and I go, okay. I want to plug in points because I can't remember how to do it by hand. Now you're going to get to where you're not going to want to plug in points because it'll be easier to do it the other way. Okay, but let's say right here at the beginning, we are just going to plug in points. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick any points along the x-axis. Pick a value for x. Anybody?
Just like
2, okay. So x is equal to 2 right there, correct? Okay, so I'm going to pick a 2 for my x, and I'm going to plug it in. Y is equal to 3 times 2 plus 4. And it's going to give me the y value, okay? So that's 6 plus 4, which is going to be 10, right? So I'm going to graph the point to 10. So when x is equal to 2, the y value is equal to 10. So So that's the point 2, 10.
So, but then how do you,
Get another one.
how do, is there like, if there's like, is there no right or wrong
No.
answer in a,
There is no right or wrong answer in the sense that I could pick any value for x I want to pick.
so in the
Because
book-
that line's going to go forever and ever. So any x I pick, I'm going to have a y value. Now, when it's not a line, that's not always true. Okay, but when it's a line, you know that your domain is basically all real numbers. Any x can work. So I don't want to go off my chart. So the next one I pick, I might pick 0. Okay, typically I stick around 0, 1, -1, somewhere in that area, just because it's easier math. Okay, so I have y is equal to 3 times 0 plus 4. So I have 0, 4. Okay, you with me? You sure?
yeah, I think so. So in the book, if they asked you to graph that,
Right now, you just pick a couple points. But even at the end of today, I gotta look and see what the next chapter does. Yeah, all right, no, I'm gonna teach you the other way, because they assume you know it, okay? So that's one way to do it, not the easiest way. I'm always gonna go for the easiest way, so let's go for the easiest way, okay? All right, that is in the right form. That's in y equals mx plus b form. This right here is the slope. This right here is the y-intercept, which means where it crosses the y-axis, okay? So where does it cross the y-axis?
right, +4.
Okay, so here's my y. So I find 4 on my y. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to put a dot right there, okay? This right here is the slope. Slope is always rise over run. So it tells me how far up and how far over. Okay, rise is the same thing as up and down. Run is the same thing as right and left. Okay? Yes, no? Okay, so the top number is my up and down. You say, well, there's only one number. Well, if there's only one number, you know it's understood over top of 1, right? So it's a +3, so I'm going to go from this point, I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go over to the right 1. So there's my other point. I can draw my line through 2 points. Let's say that was a -1, okay? Then what I could do is I go up 1, 2, 3, and I go to the left 1. Okay? All right, let's do another one.
I think this makes more sense than the other one.
I don't like the plug it in. The plugging in it always works, but it's very time consuming. And so it's so much easier if you can do it the shortcut way. And you go, oh no, it's a fraction. Well, I want it to be a fraction because it's the slope. So where's my y-intercept?
-2.
-2. Are you tired today?
I had a doctor's appointment this morning.
Oh gosh, so you already have been up and,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so I'm at -2. Okay, then this is my slope. So I'm gonna go up 2 and over to the right 1. So I have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yes, no, maybe? Okay, and then I'm gonna do this. Okay? All right, now what happens if it's not in the right form? Okay, I gotta restart this.